What's really good, pretty people? Yes, you. Don't be modest. Don't be like Gypsy. How you know I'm pretty? Cause I seen your profile pics when you subscribed and left a comment, boo boo. I see you. Okay, if you came over here from part 1 of my Gypsy Rose, all of the controversies video, get ready, cause my theorist hat is on and I am feeling myself in it, you know what I'm saying? And I'm very eager to hear your counter theories if you're inclined to share them in the comments as you're listening. Real quick though, I want to shout out my first, 700 subbies? Some of y'all left amazing comments for me on my previous videos and I really was speechless at the positive energy. So thank you guys so much for getting it poppin' in the comment section, and a special shout out and thank you to the folks that came over here from my husband's channel, Honest Adonis 2. I was honestly shocked to see you guys in the comments being so supportive, and I'm glad to have y'all here because you guys make his comment section so lit and I need that energy, man. I love that. So I'm happy to see y'all here. Please leave comments often while we build up this community as well. I'm not as fast as Adonis is at editing and putting up content, but fun fact, he actually went to college for radio and TV production, so he's a total professional, even though he be trying to play himself down. But he don't like to give himself any credit for that kind of stuff because he likes this narrative about dropping out of school in the 8th grade and not liking school. And yes, that's kind of true, but it wasn't that he actually dropped out, it's that he just kind of zoned out, so he didn't really participate in school after the 8th grade. If it's something that he's interested in though, oh, he be going in. I'm gonna get there too, my friends, okay? Just stick with me. I'm really blown away that you guys have welcomed me into your YouTube viewership space so I can chat with you while you are on your break at work, driving, eating, sleeping, or sneaking off to see a boo thang, you know, your little side piece. Anyways, no worries, I ain't gonna snitch. If you're new here, you do not have to watch these parts in any particular order, but if you're interested to know, here is what we went over in part 1. So you can decide if you might want to go and check that out when you're done with this episode. We talked about Gypsy being banned from the state of Missouri. We also went over her allegations that her grandfather had been inappropriately touching her as a young child. We talked about the possibility of her working with Kim K on prison reform and about Gypsy being accused of using her case to gain fame and riches. What could happen if she's emotionally triggered in the future? How would she deal with a situation that makes her feel similar to how her mother made her feel? But we had more to go over that we couldn't fit into that video, so we're gonna do that in this one. Presently, I always wanted to use that word in a sentence. What a dork I am. Presently, we will dive into the following topics, which I found to be quite controversial. Gypsy's husband Ryan Anderson and all the scrutiny surrounding him, her need to share TMI for no apparent reason, a reality series entitled Prison Wives. Thanks to some of you guys in the audience, I also found a few more topics that I didn't bring up in the last controversy episode, like this: is Gypsy Rose more manipulative than the public wants to admit? Did her mom have power of attorney over her at the time of her death? And is the public starting to turn on Gypsy Rose? Now, before we get into these topics, I just want to remind you, all of the statements that I'm making here are just my own personal theories, speculations, and opinions based on absolutely no professional background whatsoever. I'm just a rando on the internet with a loud mouth and obviously not self-conscious enough to keep my thoughts to myself. But I want to welcome you guys to chime in as you think of things that may be relevant to what we are discussing. This is a safe space where all of my viewers are welcome to share their ideas, even if they disagree with each other. Just remember to not attack anybody personally if they don't share the same views as you. It's a shame that we live in a world where I actually have to say this, but we all know that toxic people live online chronically, and they feel very comfortable showing their entire butt cheeks to strangers with no shame. So it is what it is. And if you do talk abusively in my comments, I have no qualms about just deleting and blocking you from this channel, so do it at your own risk. Let's get right to it. I just want to say, generally speaking, I am Team Gypsy. I want this girl to win and prove to the world that reform is real and she's everything she is presenting herself to be publicly. To me, overall, she seems pretty genuine in her intentions, but I'm still a critical thinker and I'm going to point out the things that I find to be red flags. So I just want to get that out of the way. So first, we need to talk about Mr. Anderson, Gypsy Rose's second and current husband. There is so much murmuring going on about this man. People do not want to like him, and the reasons for their dislike of him to me seem just really childish and asinine. I've seen a lot of talk about his age, his looks, his weight, his job. Almost nothing people are saying seems based on his actual character or personality traits. We know very little about this man, to be fair, other than his age and that he's a special special education teacher from Louisiana. That's how I say it. Whenever I see this word, I'll be like, Louisiana. Apologies to everyone watching who lives there. Okay, focus, people. Now, what is the damn problem with Ryan Anderson? I've heard so many things people are saying about him, and I've had people in my own comments on this channel allege that the man looks just like Gypsy's mother. Is that true? What do you guys think? And on the surface, it's easy to be like, so what? Who cares? However, from a psychological standpoint, this could bear some relevance as to why Gypsy feels comfortable dating him. You know, humans love familiarity. Could it be that a familiar face was part of what drew Gypsy Rose to Ryan? I mean, assuming you think he actually looks like her, but overall, I don't think it's a problem that Ryan resembles Gypsy's family members. I think it makes it easier to predict what their kids are probably gonna look like. The baby has her nose, and also his nose. That's dope, right? I've heard people straight up calling Ryan ugly, and to this, again, I'm asking, who cares? Jay-Z is fugly. Stop lying, you know that man is not cute. But Beyonce is publicly very happy. Flavor Flav is ugly, and nobody criticized the vultures on his Flavor of Love show. So being ugly is only okay if you're also rich? Like, come on, that's silly. Now, I'm not saying that Ryan is ugly. I'm saying this is what people are saying to somehow discredit his value as a husband or partner, and I gotta wonder why people feel the need to focus so much on his looks. Another part of his looks they keep pointing out is his weight, which I'm assuming is another factor in why they want to label him as ugly. But listen, maybe I'm totally wrong. You guys tell me if I sound crazy. I've been married to the same dude for a while. We've been together for over 15 years. Yeah, someone in the world can tolerate my strange personality for this long, y'all. Give me a break. And when we started our relationship, both of us were relatively fit. Over time, both of us gained a lot of weight to the point where it actually started to affect our health. The good news is that we are taking it seriously and have been working the weight off the old-fashioned boring way, of course. Weight loss surgery. Psych. I'm having a laugh, mate. Seriously, we've been working out and changing how we eat, but our weight fluctuations play no part in how we view each other as partners. Our looks have very, very little to do with our actual relationship. Your looks will eventually fade over time as you age. Even exceptionally beautiful people will need to brace yourselves for reality because it will hit you one day when you least expect it. And this is the beauty of finding love early in your life. But even later in life, if your relationship is based solely on how attractive you believe your partner is, you're probably not going to last that long in the relationship. This is how a lot of folks end up in situationships. My relationship is not based on how much money my man has or how good looking he is. And at the end of the day, people have different needs and preferences. Why should Gypsy Rose care what a bunch of strangers think if she's satisfied with the looks and income level of her partner? The main thing that will make the relationship smooth is how well you get along with one another. What sort of character does your partner have? Do you apologize or even acknowledge when you're in the wrong? Or you can't tell him nothing and he ain't listening to nobody? Are they warm and affectionate? Do they trust you? Are they trustworthy? Are they dedicated to you? Or out here in these streets making a fool out of you? Are you arguing constantly because your partner refuses to put some respect on your name? These are the kinds of things that add or decrease value in a partner, not their facial features. And of course, the extended portion of that is even with parenting. Are they potentially a good parent? Because a lot of people will just mate with people based on their looks. Then when it's time to have children and raise them together, one party or both parties are completely negligent and they're horrible parents. And then you end up with these children that grow up in narcissistic families and turn out just mentally ill and get unleashed onto the rest of the community with the rest of us. I think people who criticize Gypsy's partner for his looks, and even other people's partners as well, they're usually lonely, single, bitter people with nobody in their lives who truly love them for more than just their looks. And I also think that some of these people have their own self-esteem issues because people who regard themselves highly, they don't feel the need to run up on somebody who's minding their business and be like, guess what? I think you ugly. Hey man, you fat. Like, you gotta be a misery seeker if you think that that's a good usage of precious time. But hey, what do I know? I have a strange way of looking at things, I've been told. Here's another bit about Ryan that I don't understand people's need to say in public. So many of them are trying to say he gives them creep vibes. I can't say the word here on CensorTube, but you know, the people who are attracted to children. Yeah. What? Y'all gotta stop this. This one really bothers me. Why are people saying this? It's not based on anything he said, did, or anything someone else claims about him. This man works works for the school system. Like, can we be more mindful about putting strange labels on people without a good reason? There are families whose children are being taught by this man, a school board that can see all of this commentary, and it's not good for business. We cannot just go around saying that this dude gives me a serial killer vibe just because you don't like the way he wears his hair, his clothes, or because you simply just don't like his face. It's so asinine. There are adults with children of their own out here acting like we're in high school, just talking smack because why not? Dear lordy lord, somebody help these people. Now, I did see something interesting. I saw some people on Reddit discussing why they felt that Ryan was giving them some creep vibes, and something that people were concerned about that they were talking about was because he works for the school system, they weren't comfortable with the notion that he and Gypsy were blatantly talking about their sex lives on the internet, and they found that this was very inappropriate for him to do as a teacher. That notion, I think I would agree with, because if you are a teacher, you should probably try to behave yourself and how you present yourself and talk about your personal life online. So from a professional standpoint, that would concern me, but that doesn't mean you're a creep. Just being inappropriate, that doesn't mean you're a creep. It doesn't mean that you're attracted to children either. You know what I mean? Like, I think we need to be careful how we're talking about people like this. And please, another bunch of people will say, well, Gypsy Rose talks, acts, and looks like a child. Why is he attracted to her? It doesn't matter. She's an adult. She's over 18. She's actually in her 30s and been old enough to have children of her own. It doesn't matter. You feel me? Like, I'm just speaking on my own behalf here. I have autism, and I don't know if it's because of my autism or just my personality traits or a little bit of both, but even though I'm 38 years old, I don't feel 38, whatever that means. Like, mentally speaking, I don't relate to other people who are in my age group because to me they seem extremely serious for no apparent reason, and I'm just not that kind of person. I get along a lot better with people who are much younger than me because I'm very laid back and goofy and silly all the time, and that's just what I'm comfortable doing. That's my personality. I'm not gonna pretend to be this uptight professional type of person because the other people in my age group act and talk that way. That's not who I am. So if you were just hanging out with me and you didn't know my age, you might think I was a teenager. You might think that I was in my 20s in college. It's just the way that I carry myself, you know? Now, do I know how to be mature and make decisions that adults have to make and take care of my children and do motherly things and do wifely things? Of course I do. But my nature as a person is not this uptight, serious person. I just can't act like that. And I don't think that in my 50s and 60s anything will be different. I think I will just be like this the rest of my life. A characteristic of a lot of people that have autism is that other people will view them as very childish, or you know, their behaviors might seem a little bit immature compared to other people in their age group. But that's just how we're built. That's how God made us. So what do you want me to do about that? Not date people in my age group because you perceive them to be a creep because I act like a child or I seem like a teenager and you think this person is attracted to children because they're dating me? What are you talking about? Also, just to bring you more perspective, my husband and I have a 10-year age gap. But honestly, I don't feel the age gap because both of us are goofy as hell together all the time, you know? So it is what it is. If your personalities mesh, the age don't matter. If you're consenting adults, it doesn't matter. Anyway, I think it really doesn't matter what people are saying about Ryan unless he has ill intentions and it's evident. I think people should just fall back and let this man have a break. We don't even know if the relationship is actually gonna last because these people have not even been living together since their marriage until Gypsy was released from prison only a very short time ago. I mean, sheesh, people are ruthless. TMI. But this now takes me to our next topic, which is Gypsy's tendency to share way too much information with the public. I mean, she putting it all out there. She was not playing when she said she is done with the secrets and she just wants to be honest from now on. Have y'all seen these posts where she's trying to encourage her boo to ignore the haters? I'm saying that with air quotes because this is how Gypsy's labeling the naysayers. I get it, girl. You want to lift your man up and you don't want him to get sucked into the online toxic wormhole, and I can appreciate that. However, did we need to include this line about people being mad that he is rocking her world every night? This is the type of stuff that makes me say in my last update video, I don't think that Gypsy is quite aware of what is socially acceptable and what is, you know what I'm saying? I can't be too judgy right now because I do have Asperger's syndrome and I do find myself blurting things out that people say that I should keep to myself. I'm not saying that Gypsy is autistic too, but having lived her entire life in the confines of the mental prison her mother created and then moving on to an actual prison for 8 years, I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to conclude that it had an effect on how she believes human interaction works. Now, I'm not saying people ain't hating on Gypsy Rose. What I am surmising yeah, is that a word? It is now. What I'm saying is perhaps, just entertain my theory for a moment, perhaps Miss Gypsy Rose, people are not in fact hating on your love life at all. I mean, judging by the brilliant commentary we've been hearing about Ryan Anderson's looks, I'm just gonna take a wild guess that none of the female haters are excited at the thought of trading places with Gypsy so they can have Ryan all to themselves. So is it the men that are hating? I did hear news reports that allegedly Gypsy receives many offers while locked up to perform in adult movies. However, I'm gonna have to keep it real with you, sis. Ask any man who watches these kinds of material or any woman who is part of the sex work industry. I have a few friends who are cam girls, okay? Based on what I have heard, the adult entertainment field has room for literally everyone. Looks and weight honestly have no weight, no pun intended, but it doesn't matter in that field. In fact, people who are perceived as a bit funny looking tend to do extremely well in the adult film industry due to the massive demand for fetish scenes. And yes, there are a lot of guys and some women who are into watching porky people pound it out. Fugly people pound it out, one-legged people, hairy people, elderly people. Do I need to keep going? You get the idea. So let's not flatter ourselves too much with the notion that the adult entertainment industry has room for us. They have room for literally anybody willing to take off their clothes on camera. I don't think the average dude is really looking at Gypsy and Ryan thinking, if only I was in his shoes, man, I would tear that lady up. And just for good measure, I did a little poll with my most perviest of male friends. I sent them the best and worst photos that I could find of Gypsy Rose. I didn't tell them who she was, although some eventually figured that out. But yeah, I was like, yo, my homegirl here from Russia is looking for a man. You interested? They all told me they were good. And all of them were really, really pervy guys. Don't ask me why I have so many pervy friends. But I heard a wise man say once, like attracts like. Anyway, focus people, this is not about me. I think in this situation, she was better off just saying something more general, like, baby, don't worry, I love you, we have a real connection, I'm so happy. Let's ignore these losers and just keep pressing on. If she had just said something like that publicly, I think it would have come off a little bit better. Or just talk to the man in person, because honestly, I don't even think Ryan was that bothered by the weird stuff that people were saying about him. He had to have been prepared for this nonsense the moment he decided he wanted to marry this girl and knew that she would eventually be released from prison. Now, something interesting I did read was that very recently, like I think last month, Gypsy Rose actually made a statement saying that she was going to change her public figure status that she had labeled herself with on social media. And the reason she wanted to do that was because she thought it was actually distracting people from her intention to be an advocate, and she didn't want anything getting in the way of her advocacy work. So, you know, maybe she's learning from her mistakes. Maybe her handlers or whoever is helping her navigate things is giving her some sound advice and she's actually listening to it. I hope. We all have to learn at some point, you know. Prison wives. All right. This next bit really shocked me. What is this I'm hearing about Gypsy Rose potentially having a role on a reality show called Prison Wives? What the hell is this? As my African friends often say. I didn't even know this show existed, y'all. Apparently, there is an actual documentary-style series on the Investigation Discovery Network called Prison Wives, and here's how the show was described on IMDb. Through in-depth interviews, documentary footage, and dramatic recreations, Prison Wives tells a tale of crime and punishment that will keep you on the edge of your seat and make your head spin with twists and turns. From sex to family fights, the stress of working multiple jobs, to the bizarre, touching, astounding, hilarious, horrifying relationships with their prison men. This is a no-holds-barred series that lets you in on all of their juicy secrets. Say word, what do you guys feel about the possibility that Gypsy Rose could have a part in this series? Good idea or nightmare waiting to happen? Tell me in the comments, please. I'm dying to know. So from what I learned, the show most mostly consists of women who are married to incarcerated men and following the trials of their relationships and lives, which I bet is very insightful and interesting, but I'm not sure how Gypsy Rose would even fit into this dynamic, considering she's not married to a man in prison and she herself is no longer a prisoner. Listen, this could just be a weird TikTok rumor. You know, people on that platform do not fact check a thing before they circulate all sorts of craziness. But if there's any truth to it, I honestly don't know what to make of this idea. I don't think it's entirely a bad idea though, because I think a reality show would put to rest a lot of doubts or questions that people have about Gypsy and whether or not she's being sincere in her claim that she's reformed and would never hurt anyone the way that she did her mother, despite her mom definitely being guilty of abusing her for her entire life. I just hope that if she does end up on a reality show, she has a lot of people in her inner circle there to support her, because I think emotionally Gypsy's a really fragile person. She could be stronger with time and therapy for sure, but it may be harder for her to get there while under the pressure of cameras and strangers commentating and judging every move that she makes publicly. I also heard a rumor that she might be in a reality show where it's just her like showing what her life looks like behind the scenes with her husband, because they haven't obviously been able to live together prior to her being released from prison. So this wouldn't be a Prison Wives documentary show. It would just be like its own thing where her and him are just being followed around with a camera. I don't really know how to feel about that. I mean, that sounds a little bit better than being on Prison Wives, but a reality show can change somebody's life, make it better or even worse. Look at the women on the show Sister Wives. I can't believe how long that show has been running, but all of the wives, except for one, ended up demolishing their relationships with Cody, the patriarch. And I could be wrong about that. Did the last one leave too? Because I wasn't really following all of the storylines to the T. But what about Honey Boo Boo? Her mom ended up messing with drugs and getting locked up, and her sister Pumpkin, or Lori, was playing mother to her baby sister before she was ready for that kind of responsibility. Am I blaming the reality show for how things turned out? Not entirely, but I know as a YouTuber how much putting yourself out there can affect your mental health and relationships with people in your life. It's not easy, and that's why a lot of online creators tend not to engage directly with their audience or even read the comment sections. If you're not prepared for the aftermath, it can have devastating consequences on your psyche and your life. A great story that illustrates this reality is this one that I did on one of my previous episodes of Tragic Turns, where I talk about the life and death of Etika, a very young YouTuber who ended his own life at only 29 years old. I encourage you to watch that video to hear more about his eye-opening story and what goes on behind the scenes in the lives of many creators and public figures. If you're not familiar with his story, please stick around until the end of this video to click on the thumbnail, which will take you right over to that episode. It's also linked in the info box. But in the wake of that tragedy, YouTuber Corey Kenshin spoke out in a tribute video during which he mentioned that social media is dangerous and it's very easy to get sucked into the addictive limelight while allowing our mental health to go unchecked. We already know Gypsy has been struggling with her mental health and emotional well-being since birth, pretty much, so I really believe it would be helpful for her to think about stepping away from the fanfare and media drama for just a little while, learn how to properly utilize social media, and keep her wits about her while she takes time to adjust to her new normal. Power of attorney. Alright, I didn't know this when I brought you guys the initial coverage of her case, but one of my amazing viewers pointed out a detail that I thought was quite crucial to her story. And this will lead us into the next topic, but there was a comment from one of you guys that informed me that DeeDee had some sort of legal authority, such as power of attorney, that allowed her to make medical decisions on Gypsy's behalf and just go unquestioned. So, according to my independent research, yes, Gypsy Rose Blanchard's mom, DeeDee Blanchard, did have legal guardianship over her daughter, and she was the primary caregiver for Gypsy. However, it's important to note that legal guardianship and power of attorney are distinct legal concepts. While DeeDee was Gypsy's legal guardian, it doesn't necessarily mean that she had power of attorney. In the case of Gypsy Rose Blanchard, DeeDee presented Gypsy as severely ill and with various medical conditions leading to unnecessary medical treatments and interventions. Gypsy was not actually as sick as her mom was claiming, and the extent of her actual medical needs was manipulated by DeeDee greatly. The evidence supporting DeeDee's guardianship includes legal documents, medical records, and testimonies from people that knew the Blanchard family. Power of attorney and legal guardianship are both legal arrangements that involve one person making decisions on the behalf of another, but they serve different purposes and have distinct characteristics. The definition of power of attorney is a legal document that grants one person, who is called the agent or the attorney in fact, the authority to make decisions and take actions on behalf of another person who's called the principal. It's typically a voluntary arrangement where the principal chooses to give somebody else the power to act on their behalf. This could be for various matters, including financial, legal, or healthcare decisions. The powers granted can be broad or limited depending on what's specified in the document. For example, a person might grant a financial power of attorney for somebody to handle their financial affairs, but it doesn't necessarily involve personal or healthcare decisions. Now, for legal guardianship, the definition is a legal relationship where a court appoints an individual, the guardian, to make decisions and provide care for another person, the ward, who is unable to make decisions for themselves due to their age, incapacity, or their disability. In some cases, it's involuntary. Guardianship is often court-ordered, and it might be necessary when an individual is deemed incapacitated or unable to make decisions for themselves. The scope of legal guardianship can cover various aspects of the ward's life, including personal, financial, and healthcare decisions, and the guardian is legally obligated to act in the best interest of the ward. So in summary, power of attorney is generally a voluntary arrangement where an individual grants somebody else the authority to act on their behalf, while legal guardianship is a court-appointed relationship that involves a guardian making decisions for somebody who's incapacitated or can't make their own decisions. They both serve to protect the interests of the person who needs the assistance, but they differ in their initiation, the scope of what it can cover, and legal processes that are involved. Now, I don't have access to specific court documents from the Gypsy Rose Blanchard case. It is known from various reports and medical coverage that evidence of legal guardianship was likely presented in court during the legal proceedings. There were medical records that could have been presented to demonstrate Gypsy Rose's medical conditions as perceived by her mom, which could have influenced the court's decision to grant her guardianship. There might have been testimonies from individuals who knew the Blanchard family, like friends and family, to establish that Gypsy Rose's mom had taken on the role of caregiver and decision maker for the daughter. And of course, school records and social service documents could have been presented to show that DeeDee was recognized as Gypsy Rose's legal guardian in various official contexts. So based on the research that I did, I think there was a court in the state of Louisiana that appointed guardianship to DeeDee over Gypsy Rose. And that guardianship would have been established based on the belief that Gypsy had various medical conditions that required special care. So it would allow DeeDee to make decisions on behalf of her daughter. Now, even if the court had granted DeeDee the authority to act as Gypsy's legal guardian, it's important to know that, at least later, it became evident that DeeDee had manipulated and exaggerated a lot of her medical conditions. So the point I'm trying to make here is, I don't really know. Was she power of attorney or was she her legal guardian? There is a difference, and I've seen, especially people speculating online, a lot of people just interchanging the two terms to say that Gypsy really had no power because her mother was her power of attorney, and so on and so forth. So I don't know. I mean, this is just stuff that I'm researching to try to get a better idea of what the situation was here, but there is a difference. So if you're leaning more towards this way or that way, I mean, it's like you don't really know until you have facts to back up that this woman actually had power of attorney or she actually had guardianship. There's a difference. I did hear some of her family members, like her stepmom, Gypsy stepmom, talking about how DeeDee had manipulated the courts by falsely signing documentation that basically gave her permission to make these legal decisions on behalf of her daughter. So I don't know if they're talking about a power of attorney form there or if they're talking about this legal guardianship situation, because if in fact she did forge paperwork and got a court to give her a court order, then that means that it was not voluntary, of course, and she didn't really have power of attorney, but she had legal guardianship instead that a court had appointed to her. So I don't know what to make of that, but I thought it was pretty interesting. But let's segue into this topic about Gypsy Rose and her manipulation. Now, evidence presented during the trial suggested that Gypsy Rose and her then boyfriend Nicholas Godejohn conspired to murder DeeDee Blanchard, of course. Gypsy Rose claimed that she had been a victim of long-term abuse and manipulation by her mom, who had falsely claimed that Gypsy Rose suffered from various medical conditions. The prosecution argued that Gypsy Rose played an active role in planning and orchestrating the murder, including communication with Godejohn about the crime. Electronic communications like text messages and online conversations were presented as evidence in court. These exchanges were used to determine the level of collaboration between Gypsy and Godejohn in plotting the murder. Furthermore, the motive behind the crime was believed to be Gypsy's desire for independence and escape from the alleged abuse and control exerted by her mom. The evidence presented in court aimed to establish that Gypsy was not solely a victim, but an active participant in the murder plot. During the trial of Gypsy and Nick, text messages between the two were presented as evidence to support the prosecution's case. The exchanges revealed a pattern of communication related to the planning and execution of the murder of DeeDee Blanchard. Gypsy and Nick were found to have engaged in discussions about their intentions and the logistics of carrying out the crime. Those text messages indicated that the planning phase spanned a period leading up to the actual commission of the murder. Details such as how to carry out the crime, Godejohn's role, and potential escape plans were discussed. Gypsy's involvement in these conversations was seen as an active participant in the plot, challenging this narrative of her being a purely manipulated victim. The duration of this grooming period can vary depending on interpretation, but evidence suggests that the planning discussions were not confined to a brief time frame. The prosecution argued that Gypsy Rose played a significant role in shaping the plan, thus refuting this claim that she was coerced into the murder by Nick Godejohn. Like, where did that narrative even come from, right? Okay, so here's the thing. If you missed my previous upload where I talk only about the text messages, I know I was joking around a lot in that video, but I mean, if you watch that video, if you haven't, go back and watch it because it is an eye-opener. Again, one of you guys in the comments mentioned the text messages, and that's what made me go and research those messages. Prior to looking at those messages, I also was a little bit on the fence. I didn't really know what to think, you know, because I told you guys already, I was Team Gypsy since the beginning of this story when I found out about it. But as I was looking at those messages, I was like, bruh, what in the world? Like, this girl is so manipulative. She is really going out of her way to use sex and seduction as her tool to get this man to agree to kill her mother. And there was so much time that had went by for them to discuss these things and come to a different conclusion about how to deal with her mom. She could have ran away with him. I mean, she could have called any of her neighbors to ask for help. She could have talked him out of the notion of killing her mother. She provided him with the weapons. She provided him with instructions. She provided him with money so that he could travel from a different state to her state. It's all there in the text messages, and just unbelievable the level of planning that she went to get rid of her mother. I'm not saying that Gypsy wasn't abused. I'm not saying that Gypsy wasn't at her absolute wit's end when it came to her mom in this whole situation, but she had the wherewithal and the intelligence level to figure out that this is probably not a great idea. And even this whole notion that Nick was somehow dominant over her just because they had this weird BDSM dynamic to their relationship, ridiculous. When you look at those text messages, the proof is right there in the pudding. They had no idea anyone else would see those messages. They really believed they were private messages between only the two of them that no one else would ever see. You can clearly tell in those messages the way that Nick talks to her. In no way is this man talking to her like someone who feels dominant over her or even abusive towards her. It's just no. If you have any experience dealing with abusive people, they do not call you a bunch of sweeties and darlings and honeys when they're making these demands of you to listen to them. Gypsy does not seem afraid of him in the least bit. You feel me? I'm telling you guys, you gotta look at those messages because it really was an eye-opener. So based on just that alone, I would have to agree with the prosecutors. If there was a trial and I was in that jury, I'm telling you, my critical thinking would have been spiked. I would have been like, this is off. And this boy is a little bit slow. Like, come on, let's all be real over here. You know, he's not the sharpest crayon in the box. We all know this. So like, what is you talking about? Like, he's not manipulating Gypsy into doing anything. Gypsy's manipulating him. Very clear looking at those messages. And these were just text messages we were breaking down. I don't even know what they were talking about on their online conversations and when they were talking to each other in their little chats that they did online. Who knows what else they were talking about, you know? So I don't know, you guys. Like, that makes me wonder. And people who are brought up by manipulative parents who are abusive, a lot of them tend to become manipulative themselves because they look at manipulation as a tool to help them to survive. They just pick that up. Bruh, again, I'm gonna talk from my own experience. My mom is extremely narcissistic and very manipulative, and I consider her an extremely abusive person. She's not physically abusive, but emotionally and mentally she is extremely abusive towards almost anybody who's around her for any extended amount of time. She really damaged and traumatized my sister and I growing up because we didn't didn't realize that this behavior was extremely abnormal coming from her. And over the years, I picked up a lot of her manipulative tactics in my own survival. Like, I will have to use manipulation tactics to get out of situations sometimes where I feel like I'm being attacked or I'm not safe, you know? And my go-to is to become manipulative. I'm just keeping it real with you guys, but I learned that from my mom. So it took therapy, a lot of arguments with my husband, and studying religion and trying to become more spiritually aware for me to heal those parts of myself where my first go-to is to be manipulative in order to get myself out of a sticky situation. I have a much better grasp of that now, but honestly, like, I have to work to consciously not pass that down to my own children when I see them having conflicts. You know, I can't tell them, oh, deal with the situation like this by being manipulative. I have to make myself not do that because I don't want them to pick up those traits. You see what I'm saying? But I'm not just a manipulative person. I learned that from my mom. So this is what I'm trying to say. Like, you just never know. This stuff that she was doing, I feel like I think it was just her coping mechanism at the time. But nonetheless, I think that it happened, and I don't think that Nick Godejohn is as responsible for what happened as people are trying to make it seem like he is. So that brings me to our conclusive topic, which is this controversy about whether or not the public is turning on Gypsy Rose. And as far as this is concerned, really, I think it's 50-50, but I think the people who are looking at her sideways and kind of sus, I think those people are a lot more openly stating so, and this protect Gypsy Rose, leave her alone, this notion is not really intimidating enough for people to abide by that and not voice their concerns about her situation and whether or not she's going to acclimate herself back into society properly. I don't fault people for feeling like that. I myself, like I said, started off Team Gypsy, and I am still Team Gypsy, but I'm not Team Manipulative Gypsy. I'm Team Reformed Gypsy, right? So I'm hoping that she proves everybody wrong and she cleans up her situation and she finds the support that she needs in her family and her friend circles to be able to carry herself to a place where I think she visualizes herself to be. And I think a step in the right direction is her taking down this status of her viewing herself as a public figure. So many people in my comments were talking about that, saying she thinks she's a public figure. Like, that tells me everything I need to know. And I had to agree with those people because how you perceive yourself says a lot about how you approach the world, right? So I think that was a step in the right direction if it's genuine, her taking that status down. And I hope that she's learning as she's going to be very mindful and strategic and specific about the way that she presents herself to the public, even on her personal social media pages, because the same people that are worshiping her will turn on her so quickly. We've seen it happen so many times, you guys, with celebrities, with public figures, even just YouTubers. You know, look at Miranda Sings. Yikes. People will turn on you so quick if you make a mistake or if you present yourself as something that you're not. And I don't want to see that happen to this girl because I really feel like there's potential for her to do better in life. But also a part of me sympathizes gravely for Nick Godejohn. Like, if you're part of the public that's supporting Gypsy and you're like, ride or die, I'm Team Gypsy no matter what, that's fine. But I feel like, be fair. Have that same energy for Nick. Advocate hard body for Nick too, because Nick's intentions for doing what he did were solely based on his so-called love for Gypsy and trying to protect her from this woman who you guys are saying was a villain and needed to be taken out. If that's truly how you feel, well then you should be supporting Nick Godejohn too. So that's just my take on the whole thing, and I'm not gonna say this is the last video I'll be doing on Gypsy Rose and her case. As things develop, as changes happen, I probably am gonna be talking about, you know, just my opinion on what's going on, but I don't want people to think that this is just like a gossip session. It really isn't. What happened with Gypsy Rose is a reflection of what our society looks like. Why is it so easy for this woman to torment her child for years and years and years and years and just completely get away with it, to the point where this kid even had to consider murdering her in order to get away from her? Not saying that was her only option or her best option, but like I said, why is that even gotta be an option? You know, I know what that feels like because I was in that same exact situation once upon a time. Why do we live in a society where that's just okay? It's not okay, and we have to look at these things. And Gypsy Rose's case is just one that happened to be in the limelight. Like, if me talking about my own situation, like, who cares? I'm a nobody. You see what I'm saying? I didn't end up doing what Gypsy ended up doing, so, you know, people would never know that I even had this similar problem when I was growing up. But it's like, Why do we just live in a society where this is happening to our children and nobody's stepping in to help them? There's no outlet. There's no way for these kids to get out of these situations. We're just willy-nilly believing whatever the parents are saying. And then when professionals actually notice there's a problem and they try to speak up and do something, they're being scrutinized. It's just weird. You feel me? And then another reason why it's important to look at these cases is because, again, as somebody who came out of the prison system, we want to believe that reformation is possible. We want to believe that our justice system works and that we can rehabilitate some people, not everybody, but some people who are just in a bad situation and, you know, outside of those circumstances, maybe they wouldn't have made those decisions. I hear Detective Joe Kenda, or I should say Lieutenant Joe Kenda from Homicide Hunter. He's always saying life is random. He's always saying anyone is capable of murder. So like, that's so deep that when he says that, I mean, he's seen it all. He's solved like 400 plus murder cases. What is that like to see that on a daily basis where you're just looking at people going, wow, everyone around me is a potential murderer? And it's not because you have this kind of job and you're just jaded. No, honestly, some of the most stupidest and nonsensical of reasons these detectives are seeing for why people get murdered. And it's like, really? Really? Like, wow, emotions are very dangerous. You know what I'm saying? So that's scary if you think about that. Anybody can become a killer if they're just triggered enough. Look at this case that I did about a young man who tried to kill his parents over a video game. Like, are you serious? It's ridiculous, you guys. So I like to expose these kinds of stories and talk about this stuff because these are all people in our society that we live with, that we're neighbors of, that we have to go to school with, that our children are befriending. And you gotta know the signs. You gotta see these signs and take them seriously, and don't just treat people any old kind of way. What is so difficult about just being kind to someone? I just don't understand that. Be nice. Why is that so hard? You know, if everybody would just be nice to each other, we wouldn't have to worry about these kinds of things. Your own flesh and blood, your own kids, be nice to them. What in the world? So ridiculous. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this discussion with me today. Please leave it in the comments. If you have something you want to add to this conversation, I definitely want to hear you guys' takes. And again, just a reminder, please don't attack each other in the comment section if you disagree with somebody. We all have a right to have our own opinions about things and disagree about things. And as far as I know, last time I checked, at least here in the United States, we still have free speech up in here. So let's respect that. But again, like I said, be kind. You know how to say what you want to say without being an a-hole. And be mindful of how your speech is affecting someone else's mental health. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Gypsy Kim, and I'm gonna see you guys in the next one. Ta-ta, ciao.